What is going on, everybody? It is week 12 of fantasy hockey, and today we're going to be going over the teams with the best and worst schedules, the streamers to maximize your games, and some new must-add players. Before we talk about the schedule, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button below. 60% of you guys that watch my videos are not subscribed. It's easy, it's simple to do, and it really helps the channel out. You can also hit the like button while you're at it. All right, so looking at the schedule here, it is not the best for maximizing your games. Monday, you have 13 games, so you're likely not going to have a roster spot open. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, NHL is off. There's no games being played. And then for the rest of the week, you have Friday, which has 8 games. Could be potentially an off night, could not. It really just depends on the makeup of your team. And then you have Saturday, 11 games, and Sunday, 9 games. Sunday could also be a potential off night for you, but you have to check to see what roster spots you have available. With that being said, there are some teams that could have 3 games and 1 off night, and maybe even 2 off nights if you have an open spot on Sunday and Friday. So yeah, let's just read off these teams right here. We have the Bruins, the Leafs, the Devils, the Blue Jackets, the Sharks, and the Hurricanes playing Monday, Friday, and Saturday. So that could be 1 off night for you on that Friday. And then you have the teams that play Monday, Friday, and Sunday. That could be 2 off nights for you, could be 1 off night for you, or it could be 0 off nights. So make sure you check. These teams are the Red Wings, the Minnesota Wild, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Stars, the Sabres, the Blackhawks, and the Blues. You also have teams that play 3 games and 0 off nights. It's not great, but there's some teams that only play once this week, so it's technically better than the average for this week. And these teams that play Monday, Saturday, and Sunday are the Penguins, the Islanders, the Ducks, the Flyers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Washington Capitals. Like I said earlier, make sure you check if you have an open roster spot on Sunday, and maybe these teams that play 3 games here could have an off night. On the flip side, we have the teams that have the least amount of games, and we do have some tough schedules this week, starting with the Seattle Kraken. They only play once, playing on a Saturday, so you definitely don't want to pick up players from this team. And if you have a bunch of players from the Kraken, you're going to be at a disadvantage. You also have the Avalanche, who only have 1 game as well. Yes, Friday could be an off night, but still, it's not going to be ideal if you have a bunch of Colorado Avalanche players on your team. Wouldn't necessarily suggest picking them up unless there's a player like Nichushkin who is on the wire for you. That's a player that absolutely should be higher rostered. So that would be one exception. Maybe Ross Colton because he's still power play 1, but yeah, in general, picking up players from the Avalanche is not going to help you win this week. Then you have teams that only play twice this week with 0 off nights. These teams are the Florida Panthers, the Vancouver Canucks, the Jets, the Rangers, the Flames, the Kings, the Oilers, and the Senators. And they play on 2 heavy nights, being Monday and Saturday. Now, you do have 2 teams here that play twice and could have 1 off night. Not the worst thing in the world if you have an open roster spot on Friday. And those teams are the Utah Hockey Club and the Nashville Predators. Moving on, let's talk about the teams with the easiest opponents and the hardest opponents. Starting with the easiest, we can look at teams that have an above 3.00 opponent goals against average. And these teams are the New York Islanders, the Bruins, the Canucks, the Blue Jackets, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Flames, and the Los Angeles Kings. On the flip side, the teams with the hardest opponents this week are the Ottawa Senators, the Rangers, the Hurricanes, the Jets, the Leafs, the Red Wings, the Wild, the Oilers, the Stars, the Devils, and the Utah Hockey Club. These teams have a below 2.70 opponent goals against average. Moving on, let's talk about some streamers. Like I said earlier, it's really hard to stream players for this week because you're not gaining a lot of games. If I had players on the Kraken or the Avalanche that I would be willing to drop because they only play once, then maybe picking up streamers from these teams could be good because you're getting an extra game or 2. But in general, you're probably not picking up players for the entire week. You're just picking up players on a nightly basis. Like I said earlier, you need to check if you have open roster spots on Friday and Sunday. If you have open roster spots on these 2 days, then the Red Wings, the Wild, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Stars, the Sabres, the Blackhawks, and the Blues, those players are going to have 2 off nights for this week, and they would be viable options to pick up for the entire week. There's so many teams here and so many league settings across different leagues, so it's hard to give you guys a name of a streamer that I think would be perfect for you. Obviously, it's going to depend on if you have that open roster spot on Sunday and Friday. But I wanted to give you guys an example for me because in one of my leagues, I do have an open roster spot on Friday and Sunday. And in terms of the players that are available, I think JJ Peterka could be a good option for my league. With that being said, I've been doing a weekly segment where I show you guys GiddyUpSports.com, a tool that allows you to automate your waiver wire pickups so you don't have to set an alarm to pick up the player you want for the week. With GiddyUpSports, you can sign up, you can sync your league. As you guys can see here, I'm scrolling down, I'm looking for Peterka, who is available in my league, and I'm going to be dropping a player for Peterka and scheduling it for 3 a.m. on Monday. Now I don't have to set an alarm and wake up to try and get Peterka. No, I can pick him up for the entire week and gain a massive edge against my competition. By the way, this tool is completely free. There's no charge, only available for Yahoo leagues at the current moment. But yeah, make sure you guys head over there. More info in the comments below. GiddyUpSports.com. Moving on, let's talk about some new Powerplay updates. Some of these are continuations from last week, but I wanted to update you on them. For example, Jackson Lacombe, defenseman on the Anaheim Ducks, he is still on the first Powerplay unit. Lacombe is definitely worth a look depending on your league size, so if you're in a deeper league and you need a defenseman, I suggest you take a look at him. Next up with the Sabres, they've mixed up Powerplay 1 once again. Last game, it was Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, Peterka, and Jason Zucker. So good news for Peterka, who wasn't on that top unit for a little bit there. Last week, they had like Kulik and Benson on the Powerplay 1. So at least we're seeing some progress there in terms of what makes the most logical sense. But in terms of the defenseman on this Powerplay, Rasmus Dahlin returned from injury, but he was set to sit out. It was planned. It's not like he had a setback. He sat out on that back-to-back. Byram was on the Powerplay 1 with Dahlin out, but Dahlin is fine. He's going to be back, and he's going to be quarterbacking that top unit. Then with the Chicago Blackhawks, Frank Nazar is still Powerplay 1. I'm not a fan of him unless you're in a super deep league because there's no peripherals there, and his ice time isn't that good. But yeah, he's still in that top unit. And also, Seth Jones is back. Vlasic has played really well in Jones' absence, so it's interesting to see what's going to happen here. In the game, Jones was on the top unit to start things off, but there was a 5-on-3, and Vlasic was the quarterback of that power play. So there could be some healthy competition here. I still think Jones obviously has more value, but hey, Vlasic could get back on this top unit. So definitely something to keep an eye out for, and something that I'm going to keep you guys updated on week to week. Now with the Avalanche, like I said, Nichushkin was going to find himself back on this first unit, and very quickly, he was put back on this first unit. Right now, they have Nichushkin and Colton Powerplay 1, and then Middlestat and Lehkonen Powerplay 2. Nichushkin's roster percentage is criminally low. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, but you need to add him if he's available. Then with the Red Wings, they have split up the units. They have JT Compher and Casper on Powerplay 1, and then they've moved to Brinkett and Patrick Kane to Powerplay 2. Don't know how long this is going to last. They did this last year a lot, so it's just what they like to do, it seems like, throughout the year. So yeah, that's what it is right now. Then with the Los Angeles Kings, Brandt Clark is back on Powerplay 1, and Byfield was Powerplay 1 throughout the week, but then last game, LaFerriere was Powerplay 1 over Byfield, so not too sure what's going to happen there. We will see what happens this week. We will see who is on that Powerplay 1 and who is not. Then with the Minnesota Wild, Jared Spurgeon is still Powerplay 1. I know he hasn't produced, but he still has that deployment. Marco Rossi is still Powerplay 1 with Eriksson Ek out, but Eriksson Ek will be returning soon, and he will be taking Marco Rossi off that Powerplay when he's back. And with the New York Islanders, who currently have the worst Powerplay in the NHL, they are splitting their Powerplays as a 1A, 1B unit. They have Dobson back on Powerplay 1, which is good, but they have Barzell and Horvat on Powerplay 2. So I don't know, guys. I'm not a big fan of the 1A, 1B situation. It doesn't work in real life, in my opinion, based on just historical data, and it's not good for fantasy. So yeah, it is what it is. We will see how it changes as time goes on. Then with the Flyers, they're mixing up the Powerplay like they always do. There's no point of even talking about what changes because the next game it's going to be different. I think Igor Zamula was on Powerplay 1 last game, so I don't know. They mix it up quite a bit. They like to distribute time evenly from the first and the second units, and yeah, that's what it is. With the Pittsburgh Penguins, the power plays are still split. Letang is on that 1A power play. I believe Raquel is on that 1A power play with Crosby. Russ is on that 1B power play. Carlson's on that 1B power play. We'll see if they do this long term, but it's doing okay. So yeah, they might stick with it for a little while. Then with the Sharks, Wallman is still power play 1. Eklund is power play 2. With the St. Louis Blues, this is definitely a big one. Cam Fowler is quarterbacking that top unit, and Justin Falk has been removed from that top unit and now on the power play 2. Fowler is an absolutely great add if you need a defenseman, depending on your league size, of course, and not looking too good for Falk. Very disappointing season for Falk so far. Then with the Canucks, we have some drama. You guys have heard it if you've been on social media, the Elias Pettersson and JT Miller feud, or whatever you want to call it. With this feud, or whatever's happening with Vancouver and Miller returning, power play has been mixed up constantly. This power play 1, they had Miller and Pettersson not on the same unit for like a game or two, and people were questioning what's going on here. Is this because there's some smoke about them having issues with each other? But then they were on that top unit together last game. So I don't know. I think they're just trying to mix things up and see what works. It's hard to determine what is going to happen long term here. Obviously, Garland and DeBrusk, that's sort of a situation as well in terms of who's going to get more power play time, who's going to be in each spot. So yeah, as things unfold, I will keep you guys updated. And then finally, with the Winnipeg Jets, Ehlers is healthy. He's back on power play 1. Everyone expected this. And that means Cole Perfetti is on power play 2. Moving on, let's talk about some forward adds. Some people might not understand this format, but typically the players on these lists, they are players that I think have too low of a roster percentage. I have to cover a bunch of different league sizes, from anywhere from 6-team leagues to 16-team leagues. So that's why I include a variety of players on this list. But in general, I believe these players should have a higher roster percentage than it currently is. I'm using Yahoo as a reference for roster percentage, so it may be different on Fantrax or ESPN. But yeah, I'm using Yahoo roster percentage to make these lists to basically give a perspective on how I value them. With that being said, the number 1 player on here has to be Valeri Nichushkin. His roster percentage is something like 59 or 60%. That is absolutely disrespectful, guys. Nichushkin is line 1, power play 1, puts up great peripherals. He's a monster in fantasy, guys. There's no other way around it. He should be like 90% rostered. Yeah, so please pick up Valeri Nichushkin if he is somehow available on your wire. Then we have my boy Dylan Guenther. He's an absolute stud. I do think he's going to cool down a little bit because, his shooting percentage is pretty high. He's been streaking quite a bit. That's how things go. He streaks a little bit and then he cools down. But in general, this guy is a blossoming superstar. He's on that power play 1, the number 1 shot threat. His shot is elite. You have teammates saying that it's one of the best shots they have ever seen. And I expect him to be very good for the rest of the year. Then you have Patrick Laine, who is a power play machine. The 5-on-5 production hasn't been the best, but who cares when you could just sit in your office on the left side and rip goals like it's nobody's business. Laine has 8 power play goals in 9 games, so of course, this is not sustainable, right? He has a 25% shooting percentage. He's not going to score a power play goal in every game. But yeah, I mean, the Montreal Canadiens are looking better lately. He's in the top 6. He's on the power play 1. He's going to be that number 1 shot threat on that man advantage. So I do think his roster percentage is too low, and I would definitely recommend taking a look at him depending on your league size. Then you have Mark Stone. Mark Stone, I think, is a sell high because his shooting percentage is very high. His on-ice shooting percentage is insane. However, he was dropped way too much when he was injured. I think his roster percentage on Yahoo is something like 81% right now. And this is a player that is a point per game player, getting elite ice time, playing alongside Eichel on that power play 1. So I do think his roster percentage is too low, and I do think if you're in a more shallow league and he is available, he's certainly worth a look. Then you have Kirill Marchenko. I think he's been on this list every week. I'm a big fan of Marchenko, guys. You OGs that have watched the channel for a couple of years probably know that I was talking up Marchenko quite a bit last year. This year, I wasn't too sure. I definitely talked about him as an undrafted sleeper, a guy that I was definitely looking at in my later rounds. But what we're seeing right now is insane production that looks pretty sustainable on paper. Everything seems pretty good in terms of his numbers. I mean, his shooting percentage is lower than his career rate. His on-ice shooting percentage isn't too high. His IPP is pretty normal as well. His ice time is elite, 18 minutes and 7 seconds on the year. Some games recently, he's getting over 20 minutes. He's taking a lot of shots. He has 3 games with 6 shots in the last 5. Yeah, I mean, the deployment's there, the talent is there. He's 24 years old. He has the size, he has the speed, he has the shots, and I think he's going to keep this up. Don't know if he's going to be a point per game player, but I think 70 points is certainly realistic for Marchenko. So if you want a guy that's going to put up a lot of shots and put up a lot of points with elite deployment, Marchenko is your guy. Another reason why he's on here is because his roster percentage is like 59%. This is way too low, guys. Marchenko should be at least 80, 85%, 90% rostered at this point. He is breaking out, and he is a joy to watch on the ice. So, yeah, if he is available on your waiver wire, I would definitely take a look. The last thing I want to say, guys, is that there's a lot of players that have a higher roster percentage on Yahoo that I definitely wouldn't want over Marchenko. Like, Marchenko is better than some of these guys. Matt Duchene and Mason Marchment come to my mind. I told you guys to sell high, and they are cooling down, but they still have like a 75%, 80% roster percentage. Like, you need to learn to let loose and let go of those players and pick up a player like Marchenko, who is getting the deployment and probably has a much better projection rest of the year. Next up, we have Brian Rust. This is another case of a player that has way too low of a roster percentage. It's only like 35% on Yahoo. This might be the most egregious one, guys. I know Rust is injury prone, but he's line one with Crosby. He's not on the 1A power play, but regardless, he's still getting solid power play time. The peripherals are there. The protection is there. And as long as he's healthy, he is a force in fantasy hockey. Moving down, we got Matthew Barzal. He's healthy. I understand there's some concerns. The Isles power play sucks. He's not on the 1A power play units, but he's still very talented, and I think his roster percentage is too low for what he brings to the table. We also have Jonathan Marchessault, who I think is bouncing back. That line of Forsberg, Stamkos, and Marchessault looks pretty good out there. The production is starting to come from those guys. Marchessault I've been talking about as a buy low player for quite some time. The shot attempts and scoring chances are there. He has very similar deployment to previous seasons. And in general, he's a line one, power play one guy who puts up good peripherals. So I do think he's worth a look. Next up, we have Rickard Rakell. His ice time has been elite. Great line chemistry with Crosby and Rust on that top line. Good power play time and very good shots, hits, and blocks. So yeah, definitely worth a look. Still think his roster percentage is too low. We also have Gabriel Velarde, who's finally heating up. There was no reason why he wouldn't heat up with the deployment that he was having. Line one, power play one. No, the peripherals are not there, but I still think his roster percentage is too low for what he brings to the table. We also have Macklin Celebrini. Celebrini, I know he's a rookie. He's only a pure C on a lot of platforms, but what I'm seeing from him is elite deployment, really good peripherals. He's clearly a very talented and skilled player, and he has the potential to continue breaking out on this team. So definitely worth a look. Could see his roster percentage get to the 70s or 80s in the next month or so. Then you have Pavel Buchnevich. I just think his roster percentage is too low. I understand the peripherals are not there, but he is not a 49% rostered player. He's line one. He's power play one. He has a chance to go on streaks, put up multi-point games, and I do think he is going to bounce back as we move throughout the year. Then we have Frank Vetrano of the Anaheim Ducks. Depends on your league settings, but he puts up elite shots, hits, and blocks. His ice time has slowly crept up to what it was last year. And yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Vetrano. I think he's going to be very solid for the rest of the year. When we have Matt Zuccarello, I think his roster percentage is too low. Not a guy that puts up amazing shots, hits, and blocks, but he's line one, power play one. His roster percentage is something like 62%, I believe. So in general, I do think that he was dropped more than he should have been, and he's definitely worth a look. Next, we have Stefan Nason. I understand he went on a little bit of a cold streak there, but I still think he's going to be solid the rest of the season. He's in the top six. He's on power play one. He puts up great peripherals, and he's been very successful on this top unit. So I expect this deployment to stick for the rest of the year. Next, we have Ross Colton, still in the top six and still power play one. No, there's no guarantee that he keeps this deployment because Jonathan Drouin is eventually going to come back. You still have Lehkonen there, but as long as he's power play one, he's still a must-add player. We also have Jonathan Huberdeau, not a guy that's going to put up great peripherals, not a guy that's going to be a league winner, but he is being pretty consistent lately. He's putting up the production, he's getting elite ice time, and he's certainly worth a look. You also have Logan Cooley, who is top six, power play one, putting up production. The ice time is getting better. Not a guy that's going to put up amazing peripherals, but still, he is solid with this deployment. We also have Troy Terry, who's getting really good ice time lately, putting up the production. I think he's pretty under-rostered. We have Nick Schmaltz, who doesn't put up good peripherals, but he's line one, power play one. He is producing. We have JJ Peterka, who's back on Powerplay 1. Yes, he cooled down. Yes, he was terrible for a little bit. But I do think if he's Powerplay 1 and he's getting the ice time that he's been getting, he'll still be good. Next, we have Blake Coleman. He's not a guy that's going to be a league winner or anything. But if your league counts shots, hits, and blocks, like if you're in a points league or a category league, I do think he is underrated. Then we have some Kings players, Alex Lafreniere and Quinton Byfield. It's hard to tell you which one to pick up because Byfield was on Powerplay 1 earlier in the week, and then last game Lafreniere was on Powerplay 1. So it's really going to come down to who gets his Powerplay deployment. But yeah, with Lafreniere, the case for him is that he was on Powerplay 1 last game. He's getting good ice time. He's putting up good peripherals. And the case for Byfield is that he's seen a lot of ice time lately, and he got some Powerplay 1 looks as well throughout the week. So I do think that one of these guys is going to be higher roster percentage very soon, and you might want to take a flyer on one of them. Then we got a couple more players here. These are definitely deeper league options. Jason Zucker, still Powerplay 1. I know his ice time has been up and down, but as long as he's Powerplay 1, he will have value. And if your league counts hits, that's a bonus as well. You also have Dmitry Voronkov, who is Powerplay 1 still. The ice time is solid. As long as he's getting this deployment, he should be good. And I do think he's under-rostered with this deployment. You also have Tyler Bertuzzi, not a player that I think is going to be great by any stretch of the means. But his roster percentage is something like 7%. And I do think that's pretty low for a guy that's Powerplay 1 and is producing better as of late. Then finally, we have Victor Olofsson. The downside to Olofsson is that he doesn't put up great shots, hits, and blocks, but he is Powerplay 1 on this Vegas team. So as long as he's Powerplay 1, he will have value. Next up, let's talk about some defenseman adds. Most of these guys were in last week's video, but I still think for a lot of them, their roster percentage is too low. So I will continue putting them on this list. There is one new player on here, but just to start from top to bottom, the first player here is Aaron Ekblad of the Florida Panthers. He's Powerplay 1, guys. He hasn't been taken off this Powerplay 1 since being put on. He's getting elite ice time back to the levels that we saw a couple of years ago. He has those peripherals. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Ekblad. His roster percentage should be higher. And then you have Jake Wallman. He's Powerplay 1. He's playing great peripherals, great ice time. Yes, I think he's going to cool down because he has a really high IPP. I don't think he's going to put up 65 points or whatever the pace he is on right now. But still, I do think he's worth an ad in most leagues. Next, you have Lane Hudson of the Montreal Canadiens. He's still Powerplay 1 over Matheson. He's producing great on this power play, so I'm expecting him to hold on to this deployment. No, his peripherals are not good, so I understand if you're in a category league and you're not looking at Hudson as a potential ad, but I still think his roster percentage is too low for what he's doing and the production that he's been providing for the Montreal Canadiens. So yeah, still a big fan of Hudson. I think he's going to be great all year long. Then you have Jared Spurgeon of the Minnesota Wild. Listen, guys, I understand the production has not come yet for Jared Spurgeon, but the fact is that he is still on this Powerplay 1. He's still a guy that puts up good peripherals. And I think a big part of this lack of production is that the Wild as a team have been slumping. So once they get out of this slump, I expect Spurgeon to improve. I know it's been tough to hold Spurgeon during the stretch. It really depends on your league size. I get dropping him in a more shallow league, but I do think in a 12-team league or more, you shouldn't be dropping him. I mean, Powerplay 1 on that Minnesota Wild Powerplay is valuable. And like I said, I'm expecting more production very soon. The one new player on here is Cam Fowler of the St. Louis Blues. He is only 3% rostered on Yahoo, and this is far too low for a defenseman who is now quarterback in the top unit. Yes, that is right, guys. Fowler has taken over that top unit from Justin Falk. Falk has not been good, guys. There's no other way to put it. I was hoping for him to bounce back, but I do think they're going to give Fowler a run on this top unit, and as long as he has his deployment, his roster percentage is way too low. Finally, we have Jackson Lacombe. He is still Powerplay 1 on the Anaheim Ducks. Yes, it's the Anaheim Ducks, and yes, they like to distribute the time evenly between the 1A unit and the 1B unit. But as long as he's Powerplay 1, he does have value, and he's a player that's putting up solid peripherals as well. So in deeper leagues, like 12 teams or more, he definitely needs to be rostered. Finally, let's talk about some goalie ads. A lot of these players were on last week's video, but you still have to include them here because they are must-add goalies, in my opinion. Linus Ullmark, playing amazing. Doubt he's available unless you're in a Taco league or a dead league, but I'm going to include him once again. Mackenzie Blackwood, getting more volume. He had 3 starts in a row. he's playing well. I do think that he is going to be the #1 starter on this Avalanche team. They might give Wedgwood a game every 3 games, or maybe every 4 games, every 2 games. It really depends on how well they're playing, but if Blackwood continues to play good, then he's going to get volume, and getting volume on a team like the Avalanche is solid. Then you have Darcy Kemper. I just think his roster percentage is too low. He's playing great. Pyotr Kochetkov, still the #1 goalie on Carolina. A good defensive team that benefits goalies. He's going to be good all season long. Karel Vejmelka, he is playing amazing on Utah. I know Ingram is starting to skate, but this is Vejmelka's spot to lose, guys. He's clearly the #1 on Utah now, and even though he may cool down a little bit, his roster percentage is still too low. Then we have Joseph Woll of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Anthony Stolarz is out, I believe, 6 to 8 weeks. And in the meantime, Woll is the #1 goalie. The Leafs are a solid team, a very good defensive team this year, so Woll should be great, and he's going to get that volume too. Then we have Sam Montembeault. He's getting wins, he's getting volume, but please be careful. There's going to be like every 6 games where he puts up negative points for you, so something to keep in mind. But if you're in a points league where volume is considered heavily, Montembeault will be solid. The rest of these guys are more so volume guys. They're not going to be guys that you're picking up in category leagues to improve your cats. But Tristan Jarry, getting volume, playing better. Samuel Ersson, he's healthy. He's a volume guy. Peter Mrazek, he's healthy now. A volume guy. I know he didn't play great in the first game there, but still a volume player who's played well this year. And then Destin Wolf. Wolf is starting to see more volume. He's playing better. We'll see what happens. But yeah, if the volume's there, he'll be good. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Hope you guys enjoy the break. And thanks for supporting the channel, guys. Going to be posting videos next week in terms of the waiver wire video, and also a buy low, sell high video coming on the break as well. So, or sorry, during the break. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Take care.